place. So, I give a lot of tours at Rocky Corner, well, when we're not isolating ourselves. People come, they come to information sessions, and we walk around and we talk about the buildings and we talk about what co-housing is and so forth. And sometimes the conversation comes around to, well, are there going to be animals here? Usually asked in a rather defensive posture. And are you going to eat them? And well, you're not going to slaughter them on the, no, we're not going to slaughter them. So these questions keep popping up. Some people want to have animals. Some people think that animals are part of the agricultural cycle, good organic management. Some people think, well, you don't really need to do that. There are people who are morally opposed to consuming meat, which is fine. But sometimes the questions get asked a little bit like, well, I'm not going to live in a place where other people are doing this thing. Or, well, I could live there, but I would never eat in the common house if you're going to be serving meat. And so these questions come up, and obviously, if we want to have a community, we want to have a community where everybody feels comfortable sharing meals in the common house. And so, what does that mean? And so those are the kinds of, Pat, you're raising your hand.
I was going to say, that has actually come up already today in both earlier sessions, both with Gina Sim and also in sociocracy. So that is a very hot topic.
It is a hot topic.
And also personally, because I met somebody who was in co-housing, who left co-housing over the slaughtering of animals. Which
I get, but there's also on the other side of that, where does the right to swing your arm end? So I'm all in favor of diverse feelings, opinions, moral stances. Excuse me. Coexisting, but I'm not in favor personally of somebody else telling me how to live or of my telling somebody else how to live. That's a big issue for me, and I think it would be a big issue in any community, is in a co-housing community, is people want to have their own lives and they don't want to be told how they should, they don't want to be told what their personal values ought to be. If you have an agreed set of community values, which is, where we start from, is like, here is our value statement. We've all agreed to these things. And then we all have our personal values that are not necessarily in conflict with those things, but that supplement those things. So I have my personal values, Pat, you have yours. I'm sure everybody else here does, but everybody else is muted except Francis. Hi, Francis. So anyway, so that was sort of the context in which I thought this would be an interesting discussion and an interesting way to explore the proposal forming process in a sociocratic community. And where's Ted?
Let me go find out.
Okay, you go find out. I'll keep chatting.
Yeah, I have a text out to him, but I haven't gotten an answer back. So,
okay.
Pat, I'm not sure if there's more you can do. I'm doing what I can on my end.
Okay, well, I think it would be helpful if people were unmuted, so we could do a go-around. I'm going to start a document somewhere, maybe in chat. Okay, so where did chat go? There you are. Nope. Oh, there's chat. Okay. So I'm going to start in chat to everyone. Okay, those of you who came in muted, feel free to unmute. And the first thing we're going to do is called element gathering.
I've unmuted everybody.
Okay. First thing we're going to do is called element gathering until Ted comes and tells me that that's the wrong place to start. Element gathering. Okay, so what are some of the elements that we have to think about in formulating a policy for a hypothetical co-housing community where people are growing food and where people are sharing meals and where people have diverse personal values? What are some of the elements we need to list? So let's do a go around. Peter, you're muted again. There you go.
A survey of preferences.
So why don't you come in and
Hi, I'm Sue. I'm dictating to Peter. Oh, we could put this in. All right, so I would suggest a survey of people's preferences at the outset. And a scale of 10 on how, what's the term, orthodox or not rigid, but committed, I think is the term. Scale of 1 to 10. I am so deeply committed. I have
committed to co-housing, committed to a diet, committed to what?
The relationship with the food. So my son is vegan and his girlfriend won't even touch honey. Both vegan, and so that she's militant, I would say. And so there's that extreme form. She'd be the person who wouldn't enter a building, you know, if there was meat or whatever. Whereas other people are kind of vegetarian, but they eat chicken or fish, you know, like what kind of vegetable is a chicken? But anyways, and so we all define it differently. So getting clear on how that person defines their position, which can change over time as well. So a survey, that's all.
Anne.
Oh, I think, I think those are good ideas, actually. I think we have to say what our level of tolerance is. And then if we're willing to help provide what we feel we need. Pass.
Okay, Francis. Elements to add to this?
I was also going to say range of tolerance. I guess there's the tension between my personal preference and the my ability to coexist beyond that. And so that I would want a survey to explore that full continuum.
Kathy?
I also like the survey idea, and I guess there's the distinction between, and it doesn't really matter what your personal preferences are, the issues are really going to come with what is going to cause problems for you if it's happening in your your space or in your sphere.
Okay, so Ted, I was just vamping till you got here. Feel free to unmute. Trying to do a little element gathering, but please, I don't want to be the facilitator. You're muted. There you are.
There you go. Let's see. Let me help me clear up something real quick. Sorry, I just got distracted by somebody else. Remind me of what I'm supposed to do. We're doing picture farming, proposal shaping.
Yes, we're.
Element gathering. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So right now I'm trying to do a little element gathering to see what the elements are that are going to become relevant as we form a proposal around a policy. What are we going to grow? What are we going to serve? What are we going to eat in a way that doesn't cause people to refrain from joining in a common meal? So we want common meals are important to community. We all understand that. We have shared values, but we also have personal values. Sometimes personal values are complementary to or supplementary to community values. And what elements do we need to what do we need to know first of all, and then how do we shape that into a policy? And that's the question on the floor. Can you see in the chat? Ted will not have seen. Oh, okay.
No, it got repeated. That's all good. And I now put it into a new the document so we can all see it at once and screen share it. Okay. So hold on. I'm going to screen share that. Okay. So we are continuing this, right? Have you been doing rounds so far, or was this so are we in the middle of a round?
We started a round. Of course, now the screen is all in a different order, but we have Anne, Francis, Kathy, and Sue and Peter have contributed so far.
Now, of course, I can't share the screen at the same time as doing this. So let's build an actual, has Diane gone already?
No.
I haven't, but I have nothing to add.
Okay, hold on. That doesn't help me get up to speed here. Kathy, hold on, I'm still typing out the name. Mabel, have you spoken?
My commitment to food is that I like to eat. That's about it.
Are you sure you're gonna? Never mind. Okay. So who am I forgetting? Who is not on the list that I'm gonna screen share now?
So you've got Vladimir, you've got Mabel, you've got Jack, and you've got Ruth Eddy.
And Vladimir.
I said Vladimir. And Pat.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me not go through the round, but let me ask who still has elements here of this that go into food.
I have a bunch when other people are
okay,
done.
Then how about you do two and then Kathy does one?
Is this facility going to be comfortable for people who have religious level of comfort for people with religious convictions about food?
Got it. Another one?
Raising animals on the farm.
Okay. I don't see a name, but I think it's Kathy.
I wanted to add allergies as a consideration, and also the meta question as a governance situation. I already gave my elements in the round, but then I thought of something else. Is there room for that?
Yes, please. Now it's a good, yeah, the perfect moment. Yes. So now, Kathy, do you want to say them? Sorry, I understood you that we had
That was
another.
it. That was it. The question about allergies.
Okay. Anything else that you don't see here yet? All right. So can I have then consent from the people who are actively involved? Oh, did you raise your hand, Vladimir? Do you have something else? Sorry, I don't see that when I speak there. Go ahead then.
I will object to killing animals on.
Hold on. Okay, yes. So hold on. I can. Hold on 1 second. Here's what I'm going to do with that, because right now we're just trying to gather what the elements are, and I would assume that you agree that the question of whether animals should be raised is a question that needs to be addressed. Do you agree with that piece? That the question needs to be answered of whether animals should be raised to eat.
I'm not really sure. I'm okay with other living creatures being raised. I'm just not okay with them being killed. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like
yes, that makes sense, but my question is something else. Let me rephrase that. Do you agree that the question of whether animals should be raised for meat is a question that should be answered in this process?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, that's what we're doing right now. We're just trying to get on the same page of what the elements are that need an answer. And that is needs an answer. But I already wrote that down here under proposal ideas because I don't want to lose the thought. But for now, right now, I'm trying to sort of scope out what the elements are that we know we will have to answer. So, Mabel, I did not hear you.
Oh, me?
Mabel wrote in the chat that I've tried to speak. Can you not hear me? And I did not hear you. So I'm not sure what the situation is there.
There's Mabel and Neva.
Okay.
It's Mabel who's not showing. She has a question.
Okay. I don't know what to do here because I'm not the.
Yep, that's okay. I've told her she's unmuted so she can speak up.
Oh, I see.
I guess continue. I'll get
Okay.
back to her.
All right, or
I'll
just try to type it then.
She would like
Okay.
to put religious into quotes.
Oh, I see. Religious into quotes.
And I'm not sure tolerance for the religious people or by them. With quote religious convictions.
I need to hear more about why that, because there's different interpretations I have on that, and I want to make sure that I have the interpretation that was intended.
My intent there was, some people are kosher or halal.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting it in quotes. I meant actual religious convictions.
Religious beliefs. Okay, that's where. Yeah. Okay. So if we need to add something here, like whatever, what would be it? Let's just call it cultural, maybe. Or I don't know. Ideological, maybe. Something like that.
Allergies could be allergies or other health.
Sensibilities. All right. Is there anything, Dick, do you have anything for that list still?
I think if we could do that in an hour and a half, we'd be doing great.
Okay. So, proposal ideas. Now you can just look at that list and answer it. For example, a good example here is just sort of good example in terms of the processes. One of the questions is, should we raise animals on the farm? And one of the answers is raising animals is okay. slaughtering them is not okay. That would be an opinion. Okay, so while this is just gathering the ideas of what needs to be sort of on the list of things to consider, now we're changing the energy to, okay, what are your actual opinions about that? Food preferences, thank you. So that's a tricky one in itself, but okay. So let me hear Anne, maybe, if that's, I'm still not sure who's a decision maker and so on, so I'm a little blind flight on that one. Who here is an observer and who's a decision maker on this? Raise your hand if you're a decision maker.
We don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so this, who makes this decision at the end?
This circle.
Okay, who's in the circle?
Everyone here. This is a model.
Everybody's here. We have no, everybody is a form. Okay, good. Okay.
I'm just observing.
Say it again.
I'm just observing because I'm going back and forth between the rooms.
That's true.
Okay. Everybody but Karen and Pat.
Everybody but Karen and Pat. Okay, good. Thank you.
My understanding is that this is a sample and we're not actually making a decision for a specific community.
Correct.
All right, so then let's do a round, starting with Anne and then Mabel on proposal ideas. So now your opinions, and I'm going to type them here, and then I'm going to share it again.
I believe that if you're willing to eat that animal, you should be able to confront the idea that that animal has to be slaughtered in order for you to eat it.
And how, and now in terms of policy, how does that express itself in a policy piece? How would you write that? How would you want to see that written down?
Any animals raised for meat should be humanely raised and humanely sacrificed.
Okay. Later on, I will also ask you to answer some of the other questions here. But okay, Mabel, yes, and you're testing the chat, so now you can use the chat to write your opinion. But while you're typing, I'm going to go to Neva.
We're just answering the question about animals, correct? Okay.
Oh yeah, so, answering any of the questions here.
Well, I'm just going to adjust the animal thing because that's what seems to be. So it seems to me that there's practical issues around the slaughtering of said animal. So feasibility of a slaughterhouse on site.
Feasibility of a slaughterhouse on site. That's more like a dimension. What's your opinion about that? I will add it as a dimension, but what's your opinion about it?
I think, all right, so my opinion about it is that it's not feasible. Particularly at
have a slaughterhouse on site. Okay. Let's do Vladimir and then Dick. There you go.
I don't know what to say at this point.
Do you want to answer any of those things? Like, do you have something, for example, on this topic or on this topic?
I think it should be known, lists should be made with people and their allergies or preferences, so community will know about them.
Got it.
And I'm okay. I really appreciate knowing about people's different religious habits and how to help people. Like right now, it's a month of Ramadan when people don't eat during the day, and when I had the neighbors who practice that. I don't want to cook any flagrant food during the day, or inviting them on a pizza party, which I did once on adventure by not knowing. So.
Okay. Dick and then Kathy. And I'm copying Mabel's in here too. Okay.
I think we need to be able to accommodate people's needs within reason and enable them to bring their own food if not.
People, say it again in the short, sorry, people, say it again in the short.
I said, I think we need to be able to accommodate people's various needs and allow them to bring their own meal if we can't, you know, if it's not possible.
So then, okay, try to accommodate.
Yeah.
Or let them bring their own food if accommodation isn't possible. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that if animal products are going to be used, and by that I mean eggs, dairy, whatever, there's an inevitability of those animals reaching their end of life and dying, and what do we do about that? Do we not eat the meat? Do we, you know, what happens?
But again, it's a dimension. What's your opinion about that one? About animals that die of old age?
No, I didn't see that up there. Sorry.
No, I added it just now. That's why I didn't
Okay.
see it. So what you just said, I added up here, but what I'm curious about your opinion, on your opinion about that one.
Well, I mean, I eat meat.
Okay.
That's me, but you know. Okay, so and another element for up above is meals have to be interesting enough to attract people. If it's just all tofu all the time, I don't think a lot of people are going to come.
Okay. Kathy and then Sue.
I was working on the same concept that Vladimir proposed, but I guess it has a bit of an addition in it. Mine says anyone in the community with allergies or food sensitivities or religious constraints should enter them on the community list. Anything served at a community meal should consider those restrictions and clearly specify any foods that contain identified items.
Do you have that written somewhere so you can copy it in the chat? Or I don't want to retype it if you already have it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in chat
Excellent. Now. Okay, cool.
Excuse me, at some point I'd like to get called on. This is Ruth Eddy, and I'm at a disadvantage because I'm blacked out, but I put under participants, I raised my hand at the first round. So at some point I'd like to get in on this.
All right. Sorry about that because
It's
I
okay.
don't have a way of seeing that. So hold on. Kathy just spoke. Let's do Sue and then you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Sue. Again, I can only see either people or the document, so that makes it a little tricky if people don't unlock themselves, unmute themselves. There you are.
How do I?
There you are.
I would like to give my position to the person who hasn't felt heard, that's been waiting in line, because I haven't been waiting in line very long. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I'll go after you. That's fine. I just wanted to get in on this before this session's over. Oh, you're blocked, Sue. Muted.
No, you're not.
Okay, so I'm now unmuted. So I can everybody see the chat? I think that to decide on rules, once people are already together, to me, the horse is already out of the barn. I think that the communities that will survive difficult times need to be aligned in norms, their mores, their intent. Yeah, obviously by definition, exactly. So that this is about intention and how I walk on this planet and navigate my challenges. And so to me, the pioneers, the people who are shaping, designing, and visioning this community are the creators and scope the belief systems, because otherwise this can tear a community apart. I think the visionaries have that, I don't want to call it executive discretion, but it's we can't, by definition, you can't please everybody, and you'll make everybody unhappy if you try to have a compromise between living in the hills and all the plains. You'll end up in a houseboat and nobody happy.
Are you done, Sue?
I am, thanks.
Thank you. Ruth?
Two thoughts that came to mind when it was mentioned about, I can't see the list now, but religious preferences or sensibilities. If we're going to accommodate vegetarians as well as meat eaters, I think we need to consider cast iron pans, which don't entirely get cleaned out and they hold their seasoning and their flavors. The other question that comes to mind is, if we're going to have accommodations for people who can bring their own meals if they can't eat what's there, are they charged to help support the common house? Are they charged if they even bring their own, if they're bringing their own food?
You have to repeat for me the first one, because I was sort of waiting for your opinion, and then I think it was still another element, so then I somehow missed it.
Sorry, because I raised my hand for elements.
Yeah, I know. Okay, but don't say it. I was just sort of listening to you with a different frame. That's why. Why.
I was responding to the element that listed religious sensibilities or convictions, and the topic was cast iron pans. If we're accommodating vegetarians and meat eaters at a meal, do we need two separate pans because the cast iron doesn't get cleaned the way stainless steel does, or other kind of pans?
Okay, now I'm curious about, do you want to add your opinions maybe about the things that you brought to, or other ones?
I think we would have to have two different kinds of cast iron pans when it comes to cast iron, and that complicates a kitchen. In terms of if people are bringing their own meals to the common house because they can't be accommodated, I think it's really important for community living that people are there. And maybe they pay like a different fee to help support the common house than someone who's eating there. I don't know. This is just off the top of my head.
Okay. Works to me. Peter and Francis? Peter, do you want to add anything? No. Francis? And then Jack.
The community meals will be designed with the intention to be inclusive.
Okay. You complete, Francis?
Jack.
I typed it exactly how you said it. Okay. Jack.
I think Jack has left the room.
Oh. Jack has left the room. That's true. So let's start over then. Anne, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so.
Mabel, do you want to add anything? And I will just wait for a chat message there, I guess. Neva?
I pass.
Okay. Vladimir?
I pass.
Dick?
No, I think for an exercise, this is enough. I think we could go on for another 3 hours adding opinions and elements, but let's stop here.
Okay, hold on. Let me press pause because there's a question in the chat, and I want to address what you just said. Actually, I think I would like to add some more because I would like to put some more meat on the proposal. So if you have something, don't hold back right now. And Mabel, no, right now I would not want you to disagree with the comment. Just make your own proposal. So just tell me, if somebody says, whatever, I don't know what, for example, if somebody says, no, people who bring their own food should pay a different fee. You could then say the opposite. And you already did where though? Now I'm confused about that. Where did you do that? Did you type anything here? Because I thought I had the list. Anyway, I hope you can tell me that. Should not have to pay. Okay, you see. I got it. All right, who's next? So Dick, do you have anything still? Now that I've encouraged you?
Sure. Are we going to create conditions that exclude people? Well, let me rephrase that as an opinion. We should not create conditions that exclude people.
Okay, and do you have something? I mean, okay. I need some how on that. So I understand the intention.
Well, I mean, okay. Do we have a list of prohibited foods, for example? You know, somebody might be allergic to peanuts, even if no resident of the community is allergic to peanuts. Maybe their cousin who's visiting is. So do we say there will never be peanuts in the common house? Do we say there will never be pork in the kitchen?
Got it.
Do we? I mean,
I
create a list of exclusions.
Right. So is that your suggestion?
No, that's my question.
I want to hear your opinion right now. I'm looking for opinions right now, because ultimately we could make a long list of questions, but right now we need answers, potential answers. So
okay.
what would be one possible answer that you could think of?
One possible answer would be no, and my preference would be no, we don't have foods that we exclude from the common house other than durian.
Other than what?
Durian. That's excluded everywhere. It's no, that was a joke.
Not so basically, let's see. I'm not even writing that right now because I sort of, by not saying it, it's clear that nothing is included. So Kathy and Sue.
I'm good.
Sue, anything you want to add? And you're muted again.
Still muted.
I love the idea of this if I would, the co-housing, the intentional community that I'll be part of is open to any food. And if somebody wants to make durian stew with durian sauce and durian tea, and that's their contribution to the potluck, then I'm part of this community and I'm going to suck it up and eat my food and not serve myself some durian stew. I think that that's what I would want. And so if you ask my opinion, that's my position. And if someone wants to bring pork, whatever, with gluten and eggs and dairy in it, bring it, and I just won't have any.
Excuse me, just one question. We're talking about we're talking about not potluck, but cooked meals, right? For the whole community. Okay. So are you proposing to do potlucks? What's your proposal, sir?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So potlucks with no food exclusions.
So all meals, all shared community meals are replaced by potlucks without food restrictions. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, the architecture of the meal is different from the food ingredients. I'm very open to any food. What function? Would you help me out with here? How it's prepared and that sort of thing. I'm very open to that. But in terms of the ingredients, I would like to have a carte blanche.
So not restrict any food.
Right.
Got it. Who do we have next here? Ruth and then Peter.
Can you phrase the question? Or what we're doing in this round? I'm sorry, I got lost.
Yes. What other elements would you like to answer in terms of, for example, the other element, how I can share again. I'm sort of going back and forth so I can also see you. What of those do you have opinions about that you would like to say in terms of how it should be phrased for policy?
Mm, 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 mm. I don't. I think I shall pass, Ted.
Okay. Peter and then Francis.
I'm fine with everything as well.
Peanuts. Peanuts.
Francis and then Jack. No, Jack left, we said.
I'm fine.
And now Diane. Diane is here, right? People sort of come and go. It's confusing to me. Diane, do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, I had just put in the chat, if people, and I don't know if this is exactly part of this proposal or part of this time in the proposal, but if people who would not be paying because they bring their own food, would they still be part of the work teams?
And now answer your question. What do you want to propose?
That people who would not be paying or be paying differently would still somehow have to be part of the work teams.
Okay, I mean, the way, right now I think we're talking about food choices and not sort of what work counts, right? So I'm tempted to leave it out right now because it does seem outside of the scope of it. All
Okay,
right.
we're not dealing with the issue of fees or any of that. Okay.
Well, fees seem to have snuck their way into here, but not necessarily work hours.
Okay.
Or am I off here? I don't know how you would organize that, but in my community, that's separate. You know, food choice is one topic, work hours is another topic, fees is another topic. Money is another topic. So I don't know. Yeah, Anne?
But there are chores a part of every meal that are not necessarily part of our work.
Like what?
Like what?
Like everybody plate has to be scraped before it goes into the kitchen. Now, so one person at a table could scrape everybody's plate, and that's like a work chore that does with the meal, but it's not part of your work hours for the community.
Sure. And now help me see. So the people who are bringing their own food, the question is, do they have to scrape their plate if they use one? Is that what's the question on the table right now?
Well, I was trying to answer I would say that anyone who eats at the community meal would have to help with the chores involved with that meal.
Okay, got it. That I understand. Okay. I think I'm sort of through twice now. So is anybody still sitting on something they want to say? Neva, maybe? You look like you might be on your way to unmuting thing. No. Okay. So now let's look at what we've got so far. And so the next step would now be to sort of sort it a little and structure it. Let me make more room here. So that we can see how this would go together. Sorry, I'm still trying to get this all smaller, but I don't know how right now. Like this. Okay. So these are all the ideas, right? Then there is sort of the farm question, sort of. That's all that. And then there is the food choices question. That's this, try to accommodate needs. This also, element also. And then this is more sort of kitchen equipment questions. It's that. And then there's more. People bring, that's fee schedule. Community meals with design. That's not specific enough here. If the person who wants to do it wants to give me something, or maybe we can throw it here. It's okay. Then people who bring their own food should not have to pay. Goes here. Not restrict any food. Goes into food choices. And then there is the cleanup. That's its own topic. So now what I would do here is basically go, since there's so many different ones, go through them and try and deal with them one by one. So, because it's too big of a proposal, and I'm guessing that this one is really at the heart of it, right? Because all the other things seem to be a little bit more figure outables, like, so the food choices is really the big one. So me thinking in a sociocratic system, I would wonder whether, let's say this is the circle that is planning meals, right? Whether or not we raise animals is outside of the domain of this circle, because we're thinking about meals. So this is not even something that we're answering here, or convince me otherwise. But that's, in the way my community organizes things, these are completely different questions and different domains.
So my thinking initially was, this is about food in a community that is producing some portion of its own food, and decisions have to be made about, do we have chickens? Do we have chickens for meat? Do we only have chickens for eggs? Do we have a dairy animal?
Okay.
So it's related.
Okay, so that is the expectation, that a lot of the food would be raised and grown. Is that already an agreed upon thing?
Yeah.
That's an agreed upon thing at Rocky Corner, and in this hypothetical community, it might or might not be.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's go with Rocky Corner by default. Okay, so then I'll move it for later then, because first I want to decide what we eat, and then from that we'll follow what we actually make. Okay, so then kitchen equipment. Okay, that will sort of follow from the rest, I guess. Hold on, I'm still thinking out loud here. That to me, I would just sort of put into its own chunk and not deal with that right now, because the whole fee system is going to be answered separately. So I would say that goes, I'll just write separate policy. Not too many things at once. Cleanup also separate policy. Okay, so let's really deal, I want to make sure we really have time for the food choices thing. So these are all the different items that we had on this one, and I invite you to just read them again so that we see what we have, and I'll do the same. Is this big enough for you on the screen? Yes.
I think that first line is community meals will be designed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Community meals will be designed with the intention to be inclusive. Then one idea was to compile a list of allergies and preferences for each member. That sort of goes together with creating clarity of people's food preferences. Okay. We need to allow meals that do not accommodate everybody's preferences. Some meat some of the time, even when they're vegetarians or vegans. Okay. And I'm guessing that the driver here is variation and sort of attractiveness. That was something that was mentioned earlier. Of me, attractiveness of meals. Okay, I'm highlighting them for myself here. Then there's the list. Okay, try to accommodate people's needs, or let them bring their own food. Okay. Anyone in the community with allergies or food or religious constraints should enter them on the community list. Is there anything on this one that isn't already in that one?
No.
Basically, that's a doublet. Okay. So now, yeah, go ahead.
It does include the important component that if there are things that could be a problem for somebody, they're identified.
That is true. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Then I'll delete everything else but keep that in. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now, seeing this, what would you do? And you can just unmute and speak right now. How would you look at the situation right now? What's your assessment of where we are at?
I'm concerned that somebody looking at this, at what this is going to end up with as a potential proposal, might consent to it and then might never show up at the common house to eat. And that, to me, is an issue for the community.
Okay. I'll write that down. Hold on. But because you're basically objecting to, I treat that as an objection, but the proposal that you're objecting to doesn't exist. So let me park it for now. So let's see. So reading, do you feel like, so the one question when we have proposal pieces is always, does it gel into a proposal yet, or are there things that are in big contrast to each other and that are basically in conflict? So what I see is that basically where things are right now is we don't restrict any food, but community meals will be designed with the intention to be inclusive. Then there is a list, and then following from the list, we, hold on. Then we identify them. This basically goes away the moment we say that. Because we're not making any food restrictions, then we don't need to explicitly say that there can be all kinds of stuff, because that's just included right now. And then people can bring their own food if accommodation is impossible. So basically that would now, hold on, sorry. This goes away, I said, right. So now this would be the proposal, basically. First saying, there is no restriction on food, but the intention, you know, the sort of the commitment to making them inclusive. There is a list of all the things we have to pay attention to. Those will be identified, and if that still doesn't work, then people can bring their own food. So let me go back here. Let's, for training purposes, assume that this is the proposal that we're making a decision on, okay? So now I'm basically shifting the energy to, okay, now there is a proposal. And I'm also going to put it in the chat so you're not depending on me sharing. So now, that is the proposal. You can reread it again. And I will, in a moment, after you've read it, ask you for clarifying questions on it. Okay, assuming you've reread it, let's do clarifying questions. Mabel, right now, you're welcome to object to the proposal. Right now, I'm just sort of trying to stick with the proposal and see what the things are that we still have to clean up in it. But so I'm hearing that, and I'm inviting you to either put that in a quick reaction or into an objection later. So for now, what I want to know is whether people have clarifying questions, things that you don't think are clear enough, or things that are not phrased well, so that you don't think that they make sense that way. So are there any clarifying questions about the proposal? And I invite you to, I know that people's energy might be in other things right now, and I think you would get the most from this exercise if you try and stick with that and hold back on opinions right now, so that you can experience the question space of, is this something I understand? Because if you're responding to things that are going to be later, you're going to miss what we're doing right now. So what does it mean to be inclusive? Thank you. That's a good question. Let's define inclusive. Or, so do you want an answer to that question, or are you saying it's not said well enough? Can you say more about that, Mabel? Because I assume you know what it means, but it might not be clear enough, so you might be more in the reaction space on that one. Or We mean, okay, so I'm waiting for Mabel in the chat. Can you write things to everybody and not just to me? Because then I always have to figure out whether you don't want it said out loud. That puts me in an awkward position when you put things privately right now. Unless you really mean that. So what does it mean to be inclusive? All right. I am not seeing an answer yet. Oh, there you go. I've said before that I don't think it's possible to accommodate all allergies and preferences. Yes, and I don't see how a intention to be inclusive contradicts that, because it's just the intention.
So maybe we do need to clarify that from the cook's point of view, inclusive means here's the meal I'm proposing, here's the menu I'm proposing. But by the way, for those people who don't want this ingredient, there's going to be a little dish on the side, and for people who don't want this other ingredient, there's another alternative. So the meal, the experience is inclusive, even if the recipe isn't. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So you're basically adding clarity what inclusiveness meant for you, and it was that there would be choices. Offer choices for, I mean, I'm going to just call them typical suspects right now. Or identified, what did we say? Identified
preferences.
Yeah, but no, I mean the other one, you know, the dis preferences, I guess. Of offer choices in the place of. Something like that. Does it make sense? So I'm saying if you could meet and you know it's a known thing that there are vegetarians in the group, offer a vegetarian version of it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure that's said well, but that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
All right. Anything about, do we mean identify rather than specify? And do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I just meant that, like, if we put labels on food and say this contains eggs and somebody might be allergic to that, or just list ingredients by everything, that would be, to me, that would be identify. And I'm confused by the word specify, I guess is really what, so for clarification, was confused by the use of the word specify there.
I see. Then you mean you want to list, so clearly list any foods that contain identified items.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will also add, just because it's not fully clear, the identified, I'm referring back to this list here. So I'm adding the identified here again. So that's the same list. So the items that are on the allergies and preferences list are now going to be items that need to be listed. So if nobody in the community has a problem with potatoes, and you have a little potato in a soup, you don't even have to mention it. That would what this would say. That's how it's meant right now. So I'm going to, okay, hold on. Hold on. And Francis, again, I understand your question, and I'm inviting us to stay with clarity on the proposal for now and not think about what we would object to later. For now, so that's, do we have the clarity now? Do we have clarity on what this means and what the flow is of how it would work? Say items identified on the list of allergies and of items identified on the list of, no, is that what you, no, that's not what you meant. Next sign, yes. A list of got it. Now I have it, I think, right? Okay. All right, so now, since we're many people, I am inviting you to type your quick reactions in the chat. So what's your reaction to this proposal? And I'm going to put it in the chat again so that you all have it in front of you without me sharing. That is the most current version of the proposal. Still needs work. Thank you. If you're a horrible typist and this is really painful for you, you can also say it out loud. I'm just trying to save us time. That's all. Okay, some of you have already written things that I assume will go towards an objection. And it's still fine with me if you add some more. Now I'm going to ask you actually one by one whether you have an objection, and if you have an objection, then I would like to hear it. But I will first ask, so I don't want, when you have an objection, I don't want you to make a long statement. All I want you to say is, I have an objection about this aspect of it, and then I'll come back to you, okay? So let's hear objections or not objections from Anne and then Mabel.
No objection.
Okay, Mabel. And I assume no objection. Okay, Neva.
Me, no objections.
Vladimir.
No objections.
You're making it easy. Dick.
I typed something in that was a quick reaction. It wasn't an objection. It wasn't a personal objection. I have no objection.
Okay. Kathy.
I have an objection to requiring choices for any possible identified element, especially since we'd already agreed, well, the proposal already included that people could bring their own meals.
Okay. So you're saying, hold on, let me just make sure I understand. You're saying it's too hard. So not all food preferences, it's too hard to offer choices for everything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Hard to offer choices for all varieties of food choices. I'll just call it choices. Okay. Got it. Aren't you yes, and that's what we're doing. I'm confused about the question. Okay, next person. Where are we? Sorry, who just spoke? Kathy. So Sue, you said no objection, and Peter. Okay, so Ruth.
I object, and I object to the line that says, clearly list any foods that contain certain identified items on the list of allergies and preferences.
And tell me, just in one sentence, why you object to that one?
I don't believe it covers enough. I think there needs to be a list of ingredients for every dish that's served. Let's say we have someone who's suddenly a last minute add-on, a visitor from out of town, and they need to know what it is, and they're not on the community list. I feel like it should be just like it is at a supermarket for me, where I can read all the ingredients.
Got it. Thank you. Then now Francis, and then Diane.
No objections.
Diane. Is Diane still here? No, Diane left, right? Hard to see. Okay. So now what I'm hearing is 3 objections. And though I have ideas about them, for training purposes, I would like for you to think about, especially if you heard my little thing about how to integrate objections, what comes to mind for you here? And so which of those objections do you think you could integrate easily? Or which of these objections do you think you would have an idea of how to integrate? And you can just unmute and speak at this point.
I think, well, I tried to address the second one, which is that, you know, you offer some alternatives to the thing you had your heart set on cooking, and we've already said in the proposal that people can bring their own if that doesn't suit them.
All right, on request, let's hear, since I'm a little confused right now, let's hear the people who objected and let them elaborate on their objections, and maybe that will help us all get more clarity. So Dick, you were concerned about people not showing up for meals. Can you say more about that?
Yes, I think so the idea is that the meal should be an attraction. Just the fact of having a meal should be an attraction. We want people to come and eat together. And if people are constantly presented with meals that offend them, they can't be in a room with the smell of meat. They don't want to watch other people eating meat, whatever. Then they're going to stop coming to meals.
Okay.
So that's my objection.
Is there anybody who needs more clarity on this objection? Okay, objection understood, I assume. It's too hard to offer choices for all varieties of food choices. Is there anybody who doesn't understand that objection? It's too hard to offer food choices just for all varieties of food, whatever, food preferences, choices, whatever.
There's something in the chat, Ted, that I will read to you because I'm not sure that you saw it. From Anne, it says, I thought we only asked objections.
I did see that, yes. But I don't want to go through all of them if they are clear. That's why I'm asking right now whether they are clear. So that one seemed, so I asked whether there's anybody who didn't understand this one. And I heard nobody, so I assume people understand the objection. And then line 3 doesn't cover all. So this was the question of what about last minute visitors, for example. And the question was, why don't we just list everything like it would also be on the ingredient list when you buy something, right?
Can we just change that line 3?
Yeah. Like this, you mean? Just take that out?
No, I'm talking about line number 3. Clearly list any, clearly
Oh,
list.
yeah, hold on. Right now I'm just wondering, right, I know. Yes, that seems to be easy to, I agree with you that that's what I would do too. I just want to make sure that people understand the objection, that's all. Okay, so now let's start. So once we've understood all the objections, Vladimir, how about you tell us what you would do with that objection. So tell me what you were about to say here.
I will change line number 3 to read, clearly list all ingredients for each dish. I don't know how to make it nicer.
Okay. And I will not ask yet for consent. So let's try that one, okay. So that would probably address this one. Hold on, I'm looking for my strike through kind of thing here. It exists somewhere. Okay. It's too hard to offer choices. Oh, let's see. This one I find easier. Let's go from easiest to hardest. How could we address the I'm worried that people will not show up at meals objection? Anybody have an idea?
I have a clarification
Yeah.
question. How frequent are these community meals?
Let's say twice a week. So what could we, how could we integrate this one?
I would not.
Go ahead.
I would not try to integrate it. When that thing happens, then we can deal with that.
Okay, so let's say, yes, I understand what you're saying, and I'm tempted to go along with that, yet this is also, you know, about training, not so much about finding a solution. If somebody says, no, this is really a high stake thing for me, especially, for example, I could understand if somebody says, hey, we're at the beginning of the community, we can't even have people get into the habit of not showing up because they dislike it so much. So one way to integrate that, for example, is basically we could, so if you remember the way I've been teaching integrating objections, you can modify the proposal. We've tried that, and we did that here, for example. You can shorten the term, like we could evaluate very, very early instead of going for 3 years before we hear that there's a problem, that there has been a problem all along, right? Let's evaluate very early. So that's one thing we could do, evaluate early, like after 4 months. 4 months in, we evaluate already. And then the third option of integrating objection is measure the concern. So what we could do is survey people, are you going to meals? And if not, why not? And we could do those both together. So let's say, you know, after 4 months, like the last month, we could send out a survey, and then after 4 months, we evaluate how things are going. This concern we have to do nothing about except for just watch. We don't, you know, we could consent to that just saying, okay, let's keep an eye on that one. And still go ahead. So I'll add that to the proposal. Basically, short review thing here, and that we survey after 4 months. I'll just add that here. And during 4th month, survey the whole community and check for attractiveness of meals and whether they are attending or. Okay, then here's another objection. What do we do with this one? It's too hard to offer food choices for all varieties. Do we modify it? Do we evaluate it early, or do we measure the concern?
I think it's covered in the proposal.
Want to say more about that?
Well, people can bring their own food if accommodation can't be made.
Okay, let's say somebody is still worried about this one and says people are still, you know, that's not fair if people can't find food because, yeah, you said you would, you know, intend to be inclusive. Hold on, we are offering right now, we are always offering choices. No, hold on, let me back up again. So we're saying it's too hard to offer choices. So right now, really, there's a little bit of a contradiction, I guess, and that's tripping me up. One is that we're saying we're offering choices. Everybody will find what they need. That's the promise here. And if it's not working for you, you can bring your own food. And something about that is funky because it's not clear to me whether we are actually committing to offer all the varieties there are. And, you know, living in community, I can tell you there are people who can't have raw onions, no cooked pepper, they're vegetarians and gluten-free. And then you have in the same meal, somebody, you know, who, you get the idea, right? So then you have somebody who wants protein meals. Anyway, so the combinations of things make things really hard. So this could easily be in a lot of variations. So that's where this is going, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So what do we do with that? you want to say, do you have an idea there, Kathy?
Well, we started off with just the people can bring their own food, and the option to the requirement to offer choices was added in pretty late. So my objection was just to that change.
So in the proposal as it is stated right now, does this objection persist?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes, I don't understand that.
you're saying, well, here's the thing. I think here's the mismatch, I think, is that when you read this, Dick, I think you're saying, well, they don't have to offer anything. They're doing a good enough job. And if people slip through the cracks and there's nothing for them, they can always bring their own food. Right? That's how you're thinking, Dick?
No.
Okay, then tell me.
Well, I'm thinking, you know, we know some people are vegetarians, and so if meat is being served, we also have to have a nutritious and protein-rich vegetarian meal.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes without saying, and we know that some people don't eat gluten and some people don't eat dairy, and so, I mean, those things are fairly obvious. You know, you want to accommodate vegans who are gluten-free, but you know, maybe there's somebody who's on a sudden, you know, because of some chemotherapy they're going through, there are certain ingredients they can't have, or they're going through a FODMAP regime, and they have to systematically eliminate certain things. Well, some of that gets pretty tricky, and at some point you say, you know, really, Roger, I just can't do that. Could you bring your own meal?
Yes.
But it's you get pretty far down the tree before that happens, I think.
Right. Here's the thing, though. So then basically what you're saying is something else than what it says here. And that is, you would say, we offer many choices. So we're trying to do as good of a job as possible. But if you really need gluten-free and dairy-free and no peas, sorry, I can't, like, bring your own food. I just can't. That constellation, you know, because I'm already making the vegetarian or the tofu version, but tofu you can't have either. You know, it just gets too many different parts. That's what so the way I understand you is we're saying we're doing as many choices, sort of, yeah, have a vegetarian option, have a gluten-free option. And then when it gets down to the super specialized combinations, bring your own food. So there's sort of a breaking point in this, right? And that's, so that would make sense to me. And then if this still persists, what we can do, sort of pulling out of the hat, again, the standard stuff of, okay, how about we say to all cooks, hey, trying to do a good job. People can still bring their own food. And we add that in the survey of, have the combinations worked for you, or was it too hard to find food? And for cooks, was it too hard to offer so many choices? And then we'll know, because we might be talking about combinations that are really easy. We don't know. So it would go into the survey here. Evaluate early, during 4th month survey the whole community and check for attractiveness of meals. Also check with cooks whether offering food choices and combos of those was creating a hardship for cooks. Do we have it on now? Let's see. I think I will go to the question of consent again. Are there any questions about what is written right now first? Hearing none, let me actually glance at the chat, because I haven't been paying attention to the chat. This was all consuming here for me. Okay. Yeah, and maybe I'm just seeing that now, but you also tried to sort of take the absolute statement out here. But I think I did that now too, in a different way than you, but yes. Okay, so now let me see, copying that in the chat, whether people consent to this now. And I would love for you to just say or write if you object. Thank you, Karen, saw that. Since it's hard to track all the people, I'm most curious, like if you have an objection, please make sure I know. If you're still typing, I have no objection, and that's okay, but right now I'm really curious whether there's any objection. I don't see any yet. That's promising. Very promising, actually. And fun fact, by the way, the agreement that we have written right now happens to be, I think, almost. No, we have one other thing in the community. In my community, that's basically what we do.
Mm.
And we survey from time to time. But it's basically that a little bit of gray zone in our community too. Of cooks just try to make a good job, do a good job.
And Ken, it sounded like you were going to say there was one other thing in your community.
Yeah, you're curious about that one. We don't list all ingredients. We just list the typical suspects. And it depends. Some cooks do everything and some people do most of it. They might just label this is the dairy-free version, not list all of them. Okay, so there's one question here about bring their own food if the cost is determined. Yes, so if cost is an issue, we can also survey that. Okay. So that's how I would go about this, and it looks possible to make a decision on that one, I find. So, but I think we're supposed to sort of to process. Hold on, how much time is there for Q&A? 10 minutes, 6 minutes to a break. So. If there are questions or comments, now is still a good time to do that, and you can do it in the chat.
When it was really a struggle, I was going to say, let's fast together and play backgammon instead of a meal.
That's your reaction? It was hard work to come up with this proposal?
Yeah, I think it was.
It is hard work.
I expected it to be much harder and not resolved, so I think this was great.
Yeah, it depends on what your expectation is, Karen.
I just want to mention that I think this process, beautiful process. And as people are going, well, you do this and then you do this and then you do this, there's a piece that isn't explicit that was done here, which is that there was a phenomenal facilitator. And that you can't, I think one of the things that communities struggle with sometimes is that simply following the steps with this kind of process, I was very sort of in awe of how much Ted was tracking and piecing together and grouping things. Like there's tons of facilitation skills in there that are not instantly evident. So I just want to point to the importance of having skilled and trained, not just talented, because that's a piece, but you kind of need talented and trained facilitators, and that makes a humongous difference. And so I just want to point that piece out of what you witnessed today.
We need your sociocracy antibodies, Ted.
So I guess my reaction is I was very open to the possibility that there would not be any solution, that was totally not, like, that was something where, when we started, I'm like, oh my God. So, I get scared too in those moments. Yet, and here's one thing I want to point out on the facilitation. If there's one thing to learn about the facilitation of this one is how well a facilitator needs to know what kind of answer they want right now. And not in terms of what your opinion should be, but what's the kind of answer that I'm fishing for right now. Because had I just let people speak, they would have given me all kinds of stuff. And you just need to sort of listen to, okay, and that's why I focus so much on that. And you might have noticed that I was so focused on distilling out of what people were saying, the proposal piece, and ignoring all the rest, that filter even over, there was this moment where somebody was giving me a dimension while I was all sensors on, I only want to hear the proposal piece, filter. And then I missed the whole thing. I hadn't actually been listening to what she's been saying because I was so focused on just getting that piece out of it. So that's, you know, that's the downside of you're so focused, you know, that it's hard to listen to the other things. But that's really, I think, what it takes, especially on a sensitive item like this one, like food. Because you can easily go down and have a reaction to somebody saying this and somebody saying that, and then you're discussing what one should do in general instead of just hammering out a policy on what are we going to do. So that's I guess what I'm taking from this. That's also something that I sort of make a mental note of, needs to be taught better, to just filter as a facilitator. All right, other comments here?
Francis's question.
Yeah.
I have a question, comment. That in the beginning, it seemed like there was immediately a lot of emotion and a lot of different thoughts about the food ethics side, the meat side. And by carving that out as a different kind of conversation, then we were able to focus in on policy. And I'm wondering, did we leave it that kind of food ethic conversation is a part of community formation, that it's already been handled, so it doesn't come up again at this point? I would just wanted to hear a little bit about that.
Well, the do we raise animals question I put off for after we've decided what we even eat. So that would still be a question, and that's a tough one. That is a tough. I know. I'm not saying that's. I didn't even stipulate that was handled. I was just postponing it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if it had not been separated out, it would have derailed getting to a policy.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's the other thing, you know, like always asking for, yes, I hear that is opinion about food ethics. What's your proposal for this policy? Like, I didn't even, you know, you have to turn into Teflon for all the other things. Just like, yeah, that's all interesting. What's your proposal piece? You know? I hear that's what you're thinking. I had, like, sometimes a phrase that I use that is super non-threatening, and I'm trying not to make it sound like I'm blaming it, because that I don't find fair, but a useful phrase for a facilitator is, wow, I hear that's important to you. Help me find out what I can write down now for the proposal piece. And that way you're basically prompting them to give you a one item, like one line thing that you can write down. And also interestingly, sometimes I sort of let things slip through when I realize, like, yeah, that doesn't really add anything right now, but whatever, it doesn't hurt me to write it down. You know, you also don't have to police it. Just, you know, comes out in the wash, and it did come out in the wash. Anyway, I'm complete.
It's 4:10, everybody. Thank you very much, Ted and Dick, for this discussion. I invite you all to go over to the ballroom to